My humble pranams to all the Satsangis, especially to Vani Madam who has blessed us with this introduction. I don't know about who, but with Bhagavan's grace, one can try to measure up to that always. We begin with the chanting of Muktakatrayam by Bhagavan. These are three ekashlokis which are complete in meaning and worthy of meditation at all times. Ekam aksharam hrudi nirantaram bhavati svayam likyate katham. हृदय कुहर मध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् अहम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वता मज्जता पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्. देहं मृण्मय जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्नस्तस्यास्तितो नाहं तत्तत भावशुक्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावः कोऽहं भावयितः कुतो मदधिये दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं. Namaskara. The topic for this evening is Mahayoga, as Bhagavan calls Atma Vicharam as. Pandit Lakshman Sharma is a devotee of Bhagavan who has sat at his feet for about 4 years or so in finding the meaning of Ulladu Narpadu, one of Bhagavan's treatises called Ramanopanishad. Ulladu Narpadu, Lakshman Sharma doesn't know Tamil that deeply. Bhagavan says, why do you worry? I will teach you the necessary Tamil. But the approach for the teaching is that Lakshman Sharma ji, who wants to translate the work in Sanskrit, has to meditate on the verse and bring the translated Sanskrit version to Bhagavan. And Bhagavan has only two modes. He will either approve or he will say it can be improved. And most of the time, it can be improved, and that is why it takes 4 years for the 40 verses to be translated. Bhagavan himself says this was the tapas for Pandit Lakshman Sharma ji, and Pandit Lakshman Sharma ji in his book Mahayoga tells us that Bhagavan himself has shared with him that Atma Vicharam is Mahayoga, and we will try to explore why Bhagavan calls it as Mahayoga. Most of you are familiar with Upadesa Saram, so let me take 3 verses from Upadesa Saram, then go into the Mahayoga itself, for which we will be referring to 3 verses from Ulladu Narpadu, and then finish with a verse from Ulladu Narpadu anubandham, the annexure, the 14th verse, as to why directly it is termed as Mahayoga. So 3 references from Upadesa Saram as to why it is Mahayoga, then going into the sadhana verses themselves. The sadhana verses, 3 verses, 27, 28, 29 of Ulladu Narpadu are called the heart of the work. Hridayam of Ulladu Narpadu. We will try to see those 3 verses and then end with the verse 14 of Ulladu Narpadu anubandham, where Bhagavan directly gives the reason why Atma Vicharam is called as Mahayoga. Let's see the first 3 verses from Upadesa Saram that I was referring to, as it is familiar to most of you. First is the 10th verse of Upadesa Saram, where Bhagavan says, Hritstale manaha swastata kriya bhakti yoga bho dascha nischitam. To abide in the heart being the thought-free consciousness, to abide in the heart as the heart itself is karma, bhakti, yoga and jnana, is what that verse says. The preceding 9 verses would have gradually brought us through, gradually is not the word in Bhagavan, but then we have to use some words, isn't it, that directly brought us to the Hridayam, beginning with verse 1, where Bhagavan would have talked about how Karturajnaya prapyate palam. The omnipotent God, his ajna, the God's will, is the sole reason for the phala. So how can the speech on the net be attributed as reason for getting the message across? Hardly. It is Ishvara Ajna that makes one receive and understand. And the set of those 9 verses culminate in the Parabhakti or Ananya Bhakti, where Bhagavan would have said that with the Bhava Bhala, with which we had started off doing karmas for phala, with the same Bhava Bhala, one has to hold the Bhavanatita Sadbhava. The Bhavanatita Sadbhava is the I am, which is underlying every thought, and holding that when one abides in the heart, that is the end result of karma, bhakti, yoga and jnana. Now, everything has been abstract so far. What is this abiding in the heart? Bhagavan would have said in Ulladu Narpadu, one of the verses on how to have Isha Darshanam, Bhagavan would have said that to see oneself, the scriptures say, this to see oneself is to have direct darshan of God. What is it to see oneself? As oneself is one, there cannot be any seeing. If you cannot see yourself itself, how can you ever see God, who is the self of all? Therefore, to become the food of God, is to have darshan of God. What is this food of God? Both the ahankara and the mamakara are offered as naivedya, are offered as food to God. In what? In Atma Vicharam. Atma Vicharam is nothing but offering all our mamakara and the ahankara at the root as food. Till then, Bhagavan says, till then we try to eat God. How can it be called eating when eating is done with mouth alone? But Vedanta points out that any sensory action like seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling and touching along with having food is all eating God, is all measuring God and trying to find out whether that measured God will give us satisfaction, will give us happiness. But instead of trying to eat God, we should become food of God. And it appears that Bhagavan would always tell one story to indicate this offering oneself as the food of God. It appears that there was a very old tiger living in a cave abutting a village. The cave is the beginning of the forest. This tiger has grown real old and it has given up its spirit to gravity. The flesh is all hanging. It is unable to move. So the villagers have made a very good habit of it. Sometimes it appears in bright day, one can have a glimpse of the tiger from outside the cave. So they have all, to whomsoever who comes to that village, they will recommend this as a tourist attraction, that please go and in that cave you can have the darshan of that tiger. And our enthusiast who wants to have darshan of the tiger, who is new to that village, with all enthusiasm he goes, and unfortunately that day the tiger doesn't come out at all. It is deep in the cave. Then he gathers courage. No, they have said it is great to see this wonderful animal. Now why should I miss the darshan? Let me take courage in hands and enter the cave. And when he enters the cave, it is pitch dark. The light is covered up by an overhanging rock, and inside of the cave is pitch dark, as it will be when you let go of thoughts. In Atma Vicharam, when one lets go of thoughts, what is there? Many of the sadhakas would say, I am facing blank, O Bhagavan. I am facing darkness, O Bhagavan. And Bhagavan would say, see the beauty of consciousness. Bhagavan would say, how different it is from sunlight. Sunlight can drive away darkness, but this consciousness, it can see the existence of darkness and still know its own existence. This is the real right, is it not? Bhagavan would say that even when you are seeing the blank, you are the consciousness. Therefore, are you not there? Can you not be self-aware? Can you not ask who is seeing the blank? In the same manner, that gentleman, he is visiting the cave, he takes courage in his hands and he takes step by step. Somehow or the other, the light will come through and I'll be able to see. But then he has come so close to the seeing tiger. The tiger can see in the dark. And Bhagavan says the tiger pounces on him in whatever way it can pounce at that age and devours him. What happens? Death is mere change of garment. It is just seeing the old garments are old and removing them and putting on new garments, says one branch of the religious studies. So what happens to that consciousness of the one devoured? It becomes the tiger. That is the story of the jiva which does Atma Vichara. It verily becomes the Mahayogi, the one who has merged in the self, the one who has been devoured by the Supreme Spirit and has become one with it. That is the first verse which gives us a glimpse as to why Atma Vicharam is called Mahayoga. Hritsthale mana swastata kriya bhakti yoga bodhascha nischitam. If you offer yourself as food to God with the bhava bala, you eliminate bhavanatita, bhavashunya sadbhava. You eliminate all other thoughts and you remain with the single I am. In that stillness, you are devoured. You are devoured by the self of all. And that is Mahayoga, because that is the end of karma, bhakti, jnana and yoga. Then come to 15th verse of Upadesa Saram, the mano nasha sthiti. Here, Hritsthale mana, in 15th verse, Bhagavan says, Nashtamanaso Utkrishta Yoginaha. Those 5 verses would have taken us from the outer to inner. Bhagavan says, the Yoga Marg takes this duality of outside versus inside. That the Supreme cannot have this duality of outside and inside. Definitely it cannot be outside. Therefore it is searched for inside, and in the inward journey, when one finds the immanent self, the Atma Swarupa inside, one realizes the Mano Nashta or Mano Nasha, and that itself is Utkrishta Yogina, is Utkrishta Yoga or Mahayoga. Bhagavan would have said, Laya Vinashane Ubhayarodane Layagatam Punar Bhavati Nomrutam Pranabandhanat Linamanasam Eka Chintana Nashametyadaha. With that mind, which is now quiet, with Pranabandhana, do Eka Chintana, do who am I? Then the Mano Nasha comes about, the triad of knower, knowing, known collapses into the self. It collapses into the self. Nashtamanaso utkrishta yoginah. Such a one who has destroyed the mind. Krityamasti kim. Krityamasti kim means when the mind is completely annihilated, all the vasanas which turn the I thought outward are annihilated. Then what happens to the I thought? I thought is completely inward turned in self-attention. Krityamasti kim. How can it do karma? How can it do any act of bhakti? How can it turn inward or outside? Because the mind has been destroyed beyond the division of inside and outside. There is no turning inward, or there is no fear that will I turn outside and lose this yoga. No, nashtamanaso utkrishta yogina. Krityamasti kim. Is there any ignorance now for such a one to eliminate? No. Swastitim yataha. The such a one who is now in the mind destroyed state is always self-attentive naturally. This too is Mahayoga. It is Utkrishta Yoga or Mahayoga. And the third verse from Upadesa Saram, which you might be familiar with, is Ahaminashabaji Ahamaham Taya Spurati Hrut Swayam Parama Purna Sat. In the 10th verse we saw Hrutstale Manaha. The Manaha destruction, Bhagavan had not taken us there yet. Hrutstale Manaha, to abide in the self, make the mind abide in the self. The word was still there. Then in verse 15, the Mamakara possibility of the mind is completely destroyed. Nashtamanaso Utkrishta Yoginaha. And in verse number 20, the root of the mind is eliminated. Ahaminashabaji aham taya spurati hrit swayam parama purna sat. When the ego, the I, is completely destroyed, it cannot have any content. It cannot have any mind. That itself is the Utkrishta Yoga, is Mahayoga. What happens then? The Paramapurna Sat rises and shines as I. And what is the sadhana that is required for this Mahayoga? We have some indications, some proof from Upadesa Saram as to why Bhagavan calls Atma Vichara as Mahayoga. Let us go to the heart of Ulladu Narpadu, where this Mahayoga, the practice, is opened up for us. Lakshman Sharma ji says, those 40 verses plus the 2 Mangala shlokas, they are the Ramana Upanishad. Out of the 40, he says, these 3 verses, 27, 28, 29, form the heart, Hridayam, the heart of the verse, the heart of the work. And now, he says the first line of the 27th verse, encompasses all the teachings of the Ulladu Narpadu. Kanakammal, one of the other writers on Bhagavan, goes one step further and says that one sentence of 27th verse, it encompasses the whole of Vedanta Sara. Now you saw Vaniji give me introduction, and Kanakammal saying like that may appear to be whatever it is, but then it is simply wonderful. The one statement is, please allow me to tell it in Tamil, then I will explain it in English. That one sentence covers the whole gamut of Vedanta, says Kanakamal. Something similar is told by Lakshman Sharma ji. It is simply Nanudiyadulla nilai, Nam aduvai ulla nilai. That one sentence has two parts. The sadhana and the siddhate. Both are covered in that one sentence. If you remember this one sentence, the whole of Ulladu Narpadu is remembered. If you practice the content of this one sentence, then Maha Yoga is being practiced. What is that one sentence again in Tamil? In Tamil it is Naan udiyad ulla nilai, Naan aduvai ulla nilai. That where the I does not arise is where one is that. That place or that sthiti where the ego does not arise is where Tattvam Asi is the reality. This is Mahayoga. But the verse does not end there. Let me reiterate this one sentence, then go into the verse with your permission. The one sentence is Naan udiyad ulla nilai, Naan aduvai ulla nilai. Nanu janma togoludale iruvantaha nelene ನಾವು ಅಪರವಸ್ತುವಾಗಿ ಇರುವಂತ ನೆಲೆ. Where the ego does not arise, there thou art that. That is the first sentence. But then Bhagavan goes ahead and says, if you don't seek the source of the I, how are you going to destroy the I? If you don't seek the source of the I, how are you going to destroy the I? And without destroying the I, how are you going to abide as that? These are the two questions he finishes the verse with. The Mahayoga versus the first verse. There are three verses for Atma Vichara. The first verse is where the ego does not arise, there thou art that. Without inquiring into the source of I, how to destroy the I, without destroying the I, how to abide as that. This is the verse. This is Mahayoga. So what is the practice? In Who Am I? Bhagavan gives the practice as soon as the I arises, you understand that you are moving away from thou art that. As soon as the I arises, but how do we know the I has arisen? There is an incident in Mahatma Gandhi's life where he says that he did those 3 All India tours, isn't it? Before commencing his work, he goes around the nation 3 times. And in one of the train journeys, the train is about to enter one of the stations in Bihar, and he says more than 1 lakh of people were there in the platform. More than 1 lakh of people were standing on the platform to receive him. And his words, which I have read, are, I could see my ego rising in elation. I could see my ego rising in elation, he says. There is a slight difference there, isn't it? He doesn't say, I was elated. There is a difference. He says that I could see my ego rise in elation. This is what in Buddhist practices they say nowadays. The words used are active mind and observant mind. Active mind is a mind which identifies with the thought, with the emotion, and goes out in action. The observant mind is a mind which knows the difference between the kshetra and the kshetrajna. The observant mind says, I can see I am getting angry. The active mind says, I am angry. This is what they say is the difference between the observant mind and the bound active mind. So, nanudiyadulla nilai, how do we know that the ego is rising? Whenever thoughts are arising, we should take it that the ego is not remaining quiet. The ego is being pushed. That is how the thought is arising. So, how do we get to the understanding my ego is not, or the ego is not silent? The arising of thoughts is enough indication. So that means you should understand the ego has got into the movement mode. And the sadhana there, Bhagavan says, to take the ego back is not to follow the thought. If you follow the thought, I am angry and I will shout at that man. But then I can observe anger. Bhagavan says, inquire for whom is the anger. Inquire for whom is the anger. You will get the answer. The anger is for me. Immediately still that I by asking, who am I? For whom is this anger? This anger is for me. For whom is this elation on seeing the crowd? This elation is for me. Who am I? The I is stilled. That is the simple act of Mahayoga with Bhava Bala. The energy of the Jiva is now spent in the technique of Mahayoga by stilling the I. Now about stilling the I, Lakshman Sharma ji gives us a beautiful gift about stilling the I. We are still in verse number 27. But please pay attention to this particular point. What he says is that we are as jivas, the assumption that we are a jiva trapped inside a body, not only traps us inside the body, but traps us in the vicious cycle of waking, dream and deep sleep. In the waking, we seem to have some ability to direct attention. In dream, we don't seem to have such ability. In deep sleep, there is the happiness, there is the peace of all objects vanishing, but we are unable to do anything about it. Because only on waking up back into the prison of waking state, we realized we slept well, we were generally very happy. Not only that, the physicians whom we meet say, did you have good sleep? So that the body is renewed well there. But then we are not able to do anything about the deep sleep. And Lakshman Sharma ji says, we are not only trapped by rising as the ego and identifying with this body, we are not merely trapped in this body, we are trapped in the vicious cycle of waking, dream and deep sleep. And he says, what exactly happens when we still the I in who am I? This is the secret that he reveals to us. He says that we go to a place where we offer our own name and form to the Supreme. The sadhaka deliberately offers his own name and form or her own name and form. The his and her also are not present there. When you still the I, there is no his, there is no hers. There is only the still I. What happens in the still I? In the still I, one has offered one's own name and form as food to the Supreme. Unadal Khan. In earlier verse in Ulladu Narpadu, Bhagavan would have said, you should be the food of the Supreme Being. So literally what we are doing in Who Am I in Stilling of the Eye is we are offering all our mamakara and our ahankara as food of God. Why we should offer our mamakara and ahankara together? It may appear funny, but what happened in 1997 was I had read through a book given by Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning to my daughter who was studying in Aurobindo School in Banashankari. She was probably in her 6th or 7th standard. The center had this practice of giving the books and the songs of Bhagwan and asking the students to participate in a sort of mock competition and give away participation certificates. You can understand that in homes, the gents are in charge of this non-curricular stuff. My better half was in charge of her learning, which led her on to engineering and other things. They were safely leaving her extracurricular activities to me. So teaching her about Ramana Maharshi came to me. Now in that book, which the Kendra had given her, there was not only a detailed biography of Bhagwan, there was also a very beautiful article on Atma Vichara. About how to do Atma Vichara. One person asks Bhagwan and Bhagwan literally takes him through the steps. I have read not only the biography, but I have read everything in that Atma Vichara with yellow underlining marker to my daughter. But I have not made head or tail of it. What it means to me, what kind of sadhana it is, my only motivation was that my daughter should achieve something in that. My goals were totally different. I thought at that time was so much preoccupied with so much mamakara in different directions. It had so many goals that it did not have the necessary clarity or purity to understand what it was reading. But then Bhagavan is so kind. He has entered my life even then. Slowly he put me through dhyana. He put me through a sadhana where my thoughts could be dropped. And when the eye was sufficiently pure, he suddenly jumped in with Who Am I? When I could really understand what it meant, what this stands for, and really could benefit from it. It's total grace of Bhagavan. But because you see the trajectory where the eye was going, now how can you extrapolate that particular life to say it is worthy of getting Who Am I? So it is the grace of the Supreme that brings clarity and continuity in sadhana. But then once we are exposed to this, what should we do? What is this Mahayoga? The stilling of the eye. Lakshman Sharma ji says, the secret is when you offer your name and form, you are like a laser light, like a ray of laser light. You can cut across the Maya or the vicious cycle of waking, dream and deep sleep, which requires the triad of Nama Rupa in the form of the seer seeing seen, knower knowing known. The vicious cycle of waking, dream, deep sleep is built on the triad of the seer seeing seen, knower knowing known. But when you still the eye in Who Am I, and you are offering your own Nama and Rupa as the offering to the Supreme, then that works as a laser which cuts across this Maya. Even in another work called Spiritual Instructions, Bhagavan says, the questioner there being Swami Natanananda, Bhagavan is asked, is this stilling of the eye? Already in Karnataka, we are known for our taking things easy. ಒಂದು ಅರ್ಧ ಕಪ್ ಕಾಫಿ ಕುಡಿದು ಬರೋಣ. And we are known for our art. All over India, If you see the fine arts, we are known for our intellectual skills, but then we are known to be indolent because it's very salubrious climate, very, very healthy all around. For eons and even today, we are relaxed, we are artistic, we are intellectual. But then is that not indolent? Sometimes we get a doubt, are we indolent? Are we lazy? And in Atma Vicharam, the stilling of the eye, is it laziness? Asks Natanananda Swami to Bhagavan, and Bhagavan says no. For every other action, for every other act, part of the mind alone is used and with breaks. Whereas to still the eye, to hold the eye in stillness, the entire mind should be brought into action and there cannot be breaks. To hold the eye, let go of thought and hold the eye and still it. The entire mind has to be attentive, and that holding of the eye cannot have breaks, because if this break is there, there is thought. Thought is break. Therefore, the stilling of the eye is mulu muyarchi. He says it is complete action. To others it may appear laziness, but to the sadhaka, he knows this is the toughest thing to do and this is the best thing to offer. One's own name and form, when you offer, that vicious cycle of waking, dream and deep sleep is cut through. And that is the essence of this particular verse. Nanudiyadulla nilai, நாம் அதுவாய் உள்ள நிலை, நானுதிக்கும் ஸ்தானமதை நாடாமல். Without enquiring into the source of the eye, how are you going to eliminate the eye thought? The eye thought will keep on rising. And without eliminating the eye thought, how are you going to abide as the source, as asks Bhagavan? And the Mahayoga sadhana in who am I is, whenever a thought arises, do not allow the ego to flourish by following the thought, but inquire diligently, for whom is this thought? The answer will come, this thought is for me, who am I? Will still the eye. That is verse number 27. Verse number 28. is the other path of Mahayoga called Vensamai. Vensamai and who am I are the two modes of self-inquiry. Vensamai is called as the Bhakti Marga in Atma Vichara. And who am I, the stilling of the eye, is called as the Jnana Marga. Why so? In stilling of the eye, the Jnana and eye are not different, even in sadhana. In Vensamai, the source of the eye is assumed to be somewhere deep down. So we take the eye and seek the source. That is why Vensamai, from where do I arise? That is called as Bhakti Marga. We have the trust that the self is there as the Adhara, but then I am an entity and I am diving deep to seek the source. That is the verse number 28. எழும்பும் அகந்தை எழுமிடத்தை நீரில் விழுந்த பொருள் காண வேண்டி முழுகுதல் போல். To put it in English, when we lose an object of value into a well or into a lake. Let's take a well. In Kerala, where we lived for some years, opposite to our house, just across the road, we used to have well. Just 100 meters from the well, we had Periyar, the huge river which used to overflow and have floods in the monsoons. So near about monsoons, the water will almost be near the brim in the well. We can just bend and pick up the water. So it was about 40-50 feet. Many a time we would lose things there. And somebody leaning over might have dropped something of value. And sometimes it may not be possible to extract that by just using the dredge. There used to be a dredge, a heavy thing, which we when put it into the water will scourge the ground and will usually bring some objects like the vessels which are dropped and all that. But if the object is too fine, like a ring or something like that, very precious but small, then there would be expert divers who dive into the water and get. It is like that, says Bhagavan. Vensamai is like that. That as though you are searching for a very precious and valuable object deep within water. How do you search for that? பொருள் காண வேண்டி முழுகுதல் போல் பேச்சு மூச்சடக்கிக் கொண்டு. Can you speak anything underwater? Can you breathe underwater? The breath is held. The speech faculty is held. In fact, these are kept in abeyance through the practice of vairagya. That is, the indriyas, the prana, the other thoughts are all kept in check as the other side of diving deep. When you are diving deep in Vensamai, what happens to the other side? See, in the stilling eye, the whole path of Mamakara is crossed. In diving deep, the Mamakara is retained, but Mamakara is kept aside by Vairagya. Bhagavan would say, this diving deep into Vensamai is like the pearl divers of those days who would tie heavy stones in there. Where did they have oxygen masks and other things? They would tie heavy stones around their hips and just jump over. The weight would take them down. They would grab the right pearls or whatever, oysters, drop the weights there and rise to the surface. Like that, like those weights around the waists of the pearl divers, we should have Vairagya. What is this Vairagya? What are the thoughts that could bring us back to the surface and not make us dive deep? Our worlds are really very small. Come to think of it, there is a comedian called John Cleese. He would talk about his mother. When talking about her, he would say, was the jocular part, he would say that he would call her, it appears, 2 times in a week, which is probably all right in the West, but probably not so in our own culture. And each time he calls, she would say, it appears, somehow this week I seem to be down. And he says, how can she say that? Over 50 years, which I have been inquiring. She lives up to 100. And he says about his mother that she lived right through the 20th century. She was born in probably 1899 and moved on somewhere in 2001 or 2002. She lived through the entire century. She lived through First World War. She lived through the plague. She lived through the Second World War. She lived through the moon launch. She lived through the recessions, the Great Depression, the recession of the years in 1990s, I think. But the beauty is, she did not know any of this. She lived without knowing any of these events happening, he would say. That means the happenings have been going on, but the consciousness has been taken by Bhagavan, where she did not have, the others would have wondered and troubled about all that. What is going to happen? Will this plague eat away? Will this world war consume the whole world or not? But Bhagavan has not given her that trouble. He would say jocularly, she lived through all this without knowing anything about that. Her world is only her son. Probably she had him as the only son. So our worlds are really very small. Those which we take as our own areas of interest, which we are worried about. Some players may need bigger playing fields. They may play with the whole of India as their playing field. Then only they feel invigorated. Some may play with the whole of the universe, where the global warming or the issues which make them come into action. But then still these areas of interest are few. We will see that these are the thoughts that take us away from diving deep. That while diving deep to the source, the areas where we feel we are doing things, we are the key people there, and without us that thing cannot go on. Without us our daughter cannot survive. Without us our grandson will have great difficulty. What will be the thoughts? And what should be the vairagya in Atma Vicharam? The vairagya should be to let go of that thoughts. And what will help in that vairagya? All the devotion we have had before, that it is Bhagavan who is taking care, that it is the Ishvara who is taking care, that will reduce our doership. And the whole of Bhakti Marga we have worked, that we have learned slowly, the path of devotion will help in Atma Vicharam, because the Vairagya will be natural. Nanen ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. What am I doing? It is Bhagavan who is protecting my child. So, ಚಿಂತೆ ಯಾಕೆ ಮಾಡುತ್ತಿದ್ದೆ? ಚಿನ್ಮಯನಿದ್ದಾನೆ. When the Chinmaya is there, why should I worry? Then alone, letting go of that thought will be easy. Though I am working for global warming, it is really Ishvara who is doer. Therefore, though I go and participate, I do it with surrender, and when I sit in Atma Vicharam, I am able to easily let go of that thought of what will happen to the world. I go to State Bank, I am a deputy general manager, but then it is not me who is keeping the bank, the millions of customers, the lakhs of employees, the India, Desha, the country which is supporting the organization. I go in the morning, but the institution is kept there by the Supreme. Therefore, there is surrender. Even though I am working, I am having surrender. Then, when we sit for Atma Vicharam, letting go of the thought of the bank, or of the child, or of the grandson, or of what will happen to this world, will be easy and natural. Vairagya will be natural. The Vensamaya will be natural. Then the pearl of the Atma Swarupa will be available to us, because Mamakara is completely gone. Therefore, Ahankara will meet its demise. Ahankara will be dismantled, and one will reach the Atma Swarupa through Vensamaya. That is verse number 28, where the Vensamaya is taught. Verse number 29 compares Atma Vicharam, the Mahayoga, with Dhyana. நானென்று வாயால் நவிலாது உள்ளாள் மனத்தால் நானென்றெங்குந்துமென நாடுதலே ஞான நெறி ஆமன்றி யாமன்றி அன்றிது நாம் அதுவென்றுண்ண துணையாம் அது விசாரம். In Dhyana, the verse says, when we do Dhyana, I was given a Dhyana mantra by the Kanchi Acharya, Vijayendra Saraswatikal, sometime in the year 98, on his own Ishta Devata, which I could hold for 3 years, and which brought me, it was the grace of the mantra which brought me to the next stage of observing thoughts. And while going, the mantra did not even make me feel I am living the sadhana. It was a mantra on his Ishta, Venkatachalapati. 3 years, morning and night, I would do the meditation, the Dhyana. In Dhyana, what we are doing, the verse is saying, whenever other thoughts arise, there also thoughts arise. What we do is, I am not this. I am Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana. Yeah. I am this mantra. The identity is shifted from something else by doing neti and holding the dhyana lakshya. Purify yourself to hold the who am I. In who am I, one directly holds the truth of the I. In dhyana, what one does? One says that I am not this, I am that. And Bhagavan says that is a marga, that is a way to come to Atma Vichara. Dhyana is a way to come to the Mahayoga. That is exactly what happened in my case. Need not necessarily that it should happen in everyone's situation. We had this old lady who was a Ramanama Japi, who had come to our self-enquiry sessions. She had come over to her son's place, somewhere near Sanjay Nagar. She had asked him, I am not spending my evenings in a nice way. So please take me anywhere where meditation is being done. I will keep thinking of Rama, or whatever she said. That gentleman brought her to our sessions. And she was happily doing self-enquiry for 6-7 weeks. And at some point, she stopped me from returning home after the session. She accosted me and asked, see, when you describe who am I, what to do when thoughts arise, do not follow it, but ask for whom is this thought. I am able to do that. I am able to do who am I, and I am able to still the I. But then sometimes I get a doubt that whether I am living my Rama. And she said, you see, the Ramanama, I have done dhyana, I have been allowed to do dhyana in such a way that I can effortlessly hold Ramanama. There is no doer. The Ramanama is going on automatically. It has become ajapa. The japa has become ajapa. Effortlessly it's going on. But then I came here and just following your instructions or whatever, I have been doing who am I. But sometimes the doubt crops up whether I have left my dhyana. So somehow the sharing we had that day, what words came out of my mouth, that must have been 14-15 years back. I told her, see, if you have come to Atma Vichara from the Ajapasthiti, that you are having only Rama and you are effortlessly having Rama as your world. Now, who else could have brought you to Atma Vicharam other than the Dhyana Lakshya? Rama only has brought you to Atma Vicharam. So don't worry, whenever you can do the Atma Vicharam and hold the self, you do it. And when you feel you have left Rama, you happily hold your deity. And whichever is the abundance that is to happen, let Rama decide. Don't worry about it. When Rama is going on effortlessly like that, you have come to the peak of dhyana, which Bhagavan says it comes. How much she would have negated, how much vairagya she should have had to hold only Rama like that, and she's seeing Rama only. That is the only drishya she is having, and that too effortlessly seeing. And from there she has come to Atma Vicharam. And in the Mahayoga, she could do the Mahayoga also very easily. Then this doubt would come. The seer scene again comes back, and I was allowed the privilege of sharing with her that who else but Rama, that Prabhu, could have brought you to the truth that self alone is, and that is the truth of Rama. He has brought you to that. And if you feel uncomfortable, you are not doing justice to your deity, easily go back to him, let him bring you back to Atma Vichara and the Atma Swarupa. So Bhagavan says in that verse that the dhyana which we do, the parayana we have done. I have seen so many devotees hold parayana. The songs they would be chanting with so much devotion that their mind is absolutely pure. I have seen Pankajammal, one of the devotees of Bhagavan, say that 2 parayanas running to about 1.5 to 2 hours, she would say that the 2 hours would go effortlessly. It is Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, Ramana Stuti Panchakam, together maybe 1.5 hours of parayana. I had met her only once or twice. She said that the moment she gets up, the parayana starts. The whole Parana mantras go on effortlessly. She doesn't have to do anything. Now that is the Dhyana Purnate. That effortless one will be made to abide in the self, Bhagavan says. So, without even taking the word I, observe from where the I arises. That is the real sadhana, says Bhagavan in verse number 29. We have about some few minutes left. We can see the finishing touch as to why Bhagavan calls this as Mahayoga. That is verse 14 of the Ulladu Narpadu anubandham, where Bhagavan says that what is actually karma, bhakti, yoga and jnana? The quest, who is he, to whom belongs actions, separateness from God, ignorance or separateness from reality, to inquire to whom is all this, is itself the yoga of action, of devotion, of right understanding, of mind control. That is the true state of self, the untainted and blissful experience of one's own self, where the seeker I being extinct, these 8 have no place. That is the karma and the akarma, the vibhakti and bhakti, the antar and bahir, and the jnana and ajnana. These dualities are crossed in the yogas, the respective yogas. But Bhagavan says, for whom is this duality? These dualities of the karma and akarma sthiti. The karma and the sthiti where one has transcended the karmas. The vibhakti is separation from God, and the bhakti is the attempt through love to become one with God. The feeling that one is separate and one is apart, one is outside of God and one has to get back inside, or the feeling of ignorance and the jnana marga, the duality of ignorance and jnana. For whom is this duality? To inquire that is actually karma, bhakti, yoga and jnana. Because without the I, none of these 8 endrumira. That is, the mamakara is all dependent on ahankara. All the dualities, let's take the duality of like and dislike. The whole of the meditation of mindfulness that does its rounds today is to see that our medium of observation is without like and dislike. That means, can you look at the sensory world, the senses, the breath, the mind, the intellect without like and dislike? So to go beyond the dualities is to transcend the world and to transcend the mind, but still keep the triad of knower, knowing, known. So any dualities, if you transcend also, you will still have the triad of knower, knowing, known. Therefore, to get rid of this triad of knower, knowing, known is actually the transcending of all dualities. Bhagavan says in Ulladu Narpadu, Irattaigal Muppudigal. All the dualities and triads arise holding on to one. To inquire who is that one and see the truth of the self, all the dualities and triad collapse and drop away. Now, such a one never gets into confusion of dualities and triads, says Bhagavan. So, the dualities of bhakti and vibhakti, the karma and akarma, which is actually the karma marga, the bhakti yoga, for whom is this? They are for someone, isn't it? So, to inquire that way is actually karma, bhakti, yoga and jnana. To inquire into the truth of the ego, to uproot the ego, krityamasti kim. When the ego is destroyed, what else is left to do? Bhagavan says in another work called as the Sankirtana, the Atmajnana Sankirtana. In that he says that without knowing the self, what is the use of knowing anything else? And after knowing the self, what else is there to know? Tannai aridalintri pinnai edarigilan. What is the use of knowing anything without knowing the self? Tannai arindidil pin ennai uladariya. Once you know the self, to know the self is to be the self, is to be abiding in the self. Once you are abiding in the self, what else is left to know? There is nothing apart from the self to know. That is why this is called as Mahayoga, says Bhagavan to Lakshman Sharma. Why? Because all the other yogas are for someone, isn't it? The bhakti and vibhakti, the karma and akarma, the inside and outside, the ajnana and jnana are for whom? There is one for whom all these are there, and without that one, none of these 8 will be there. If that one is destroyed, none of these 8 will be there. That is why removing this one thing, culminating in the yoga of all the 4 paths, without doubt, whether I have done Bhakti Marga completion, am I a Karma Yogi or not? Am I a Raja Yogi or not? Am I a Jnana Margi or not? This doubt will not be there because the doubter himself is annihilated. And that is the culmination of all the 4 margas. What were the verses we saw? Hrutstale mana swastata kriya bhakti yoga bodhascha nishchitam. Nashtamanaso utkrishta yoginaha krityamasti kim swastitim yataha. And ahaminashabaji, when the ego is destroyed, dismantled, aham taya spurati hrit swayam paramapurna sat. The paramapurna sat, which is the yoga, which is the parama yoga of all the paths, where all the paths go and join in that silence. That is what is reached when the ego is destroyed. That is why the ego annihilating path, the ego dismantling path, the direct path of removing the contents of the I is called as Mahayoga by Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi. It has been my privilege, given by Vani Vasudevji and Vasudevji, to share these thoughts with you, to share my absolute gratitude to Bhagavan in these words to you. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.